I wonder if any of the senators here, Senator Riza, Senator Pangilinan, Senator Subiri, may nakita na ba kayo ng $5 million in cold cash? Or $10 million or $20 million cash? $100 bills. Now, Mr. President, in the last several months, starting last year,
I'm imagining I'm visualizing that.
yes, and I will make it the visualization even better. If you look at some of the money that has come in, that is nakabalot, nasa maleta, you can see the maleta there, punong-puno ng dollars. Now, Mr. President, if you look at the way it has been brought in, a total, baka mali pa nga ito, baka $447,000.
Di ba hinugot ni Amy yung kuryente? Parang hinugot ni Amy yung kuryente. Tawagin niyo ako pag may kuryente na.
All right, Senator Richard Gordon is set to give a privileged speech in the Senate this afternoon. What you're seeing on your screens right now is a live video from the Senate. You can see Senator Richard Gordon to the left side of your screen. Now, he did begin his privileged speech just a few moments ago, but unfortunately, for some reason, the mic cut out, and he was forced to end his speech because nobody else could hear him.
Thank you very much. After I have been pecuniarily interrupted.
It looks like the microphone is back on. We go back to the Senate.
Let me just describe what we're talking about here, Mr. President. Before us is a list of POGO of money that has come into our country. And I don't know why they're using we have the real names. And I think the last time I heard we have parliamentary immunity here. And so, therefore, Mr. President, if you take a look at the slides, starting 17 December 2019, Mr. President, $2 million came in under a certain Mr. Kai. Let's just call him Mr. Kai. On 27 December 2019, Mr. Kai again came out with $4 million. I was hoping that I would see the whole line. On 3rd January 2020, or about 6 days later, or 7 days later, came out with $4.10 million. Cash yan, pinapasok, cash. On 6 January 2020, $2 million were brought in. On 8 January 2020, ang pumasok $3.50 million. 21 January, $3 million. On 28 January 2020, $3 million. And you can see the list goes on. Somebody running this. Having said that, Mr. President, makita nyo, ang dami-daming pumapasok na pera. One guy has come in with 47 times na pumapasok doon sa ating, yan ang listahan po. Yeah, may mga pangalan na yan. Can you scroll down, please, so that all the senators can see it? Can you make it bigger? You can see the various amounts coming in. Is it not possible to make it bigger? Kai Long Choi, ayan yan, no? Kai Him Chan, Xiong Leng, whatever it is. Ang dabi-dabi. 4 million, 3 million, 2 million, tuloy-tuloy. Kunyari, investment. Why Yip Leong? And the classic thing about it is that they are matino. Mapasok ng legal. Dinideklara na sila ay nagpapasok ng milyon na dolyar. So, nakikita nyo, Ayan, si Kai Hailey, 3 transactions. Si Lee Ka-hee, 3 transactions. Ang total niya, 11 million. Ito, 2 transactions. Si To Yim Leung, 2 transactions. Wi-Fi Leung, 3 transactions, $9.5 million. I can go on and on. You can see how many transactions. There is even one guy there with 47 transactions. Meron Pilipinong kasama ko na nagpapasok dyan. In total, I think I have the total among Filipinos and Chinese. Yan, Rodriguez na yan. Nahuli po yan. Simon Rodriguez. Nahuli in September. Nahuli siya. Dahan-dahan naman. Nahuli siya. At hindi pa nag-declare. So nahuli siya. Bumalik ulit. This time nag-declare. At pagkatapos, sinama na yung mga kapatid, mga kamag-anak. Ayan, John Joshua Rodriguez. 40 transactions. Can you bring it back, please? 40 transactions. Makita rin nyo, ayan, no? John Joshua, 1.5 million, $606,000. $400,000, $900,000, $1 million. Tuloy-tuloy. Tuloy-tuloy. Lagari. It's an assembly line of bringing in millions and millions of dollars to our country. Now, normally, Mr. President, ang bawat Pilipino, the moment you go over $10,000, you have to declare. Now, just because you declare doesn't mean you're not a money launderer. Now, siguro naman kahit a grade school student, pag sinabi mo, ganyan karaming doon na pumapasok, magtatanong, ano ba ang negosyo mo? Ba't ka nagpapasok ng ganyan kalalaki? At saan napupunta yung pera? Sapagkat kung titigyan nyo, a total of $447 million or 22.69 billion pesos was brought in by 47 individuals, including Filipinos, from September 2019 to February 2020. The total amount brought in by Chinese individuals was $210 million or 10.6 billion pesos, or 46.98 of the total amount. Now, how much is $447 million? Kung babayarin natin ang utang natin sa IMF o doon sa ibang lugar, aabot po yan kayang bayaran. Sapagkat ang utang natin doon ay about $200+ million. Nahilo na. Akin ang layan. So that means, ayan, external debt natin by creditor country as of end September 2019. $82.67 billion ang utang natin. Countries from whom Philippines owe foreign debt, that is around or less than $500 million. Remember, this is $400+ million. Australia, $596 million. Malapit na natin mabayaran. Ang Canada, lalo malapit, $479 million. Virgin Islands, $205 million. Bayad kaagad. Luxembourg, $133 million. Bayad kaagad. Because we can pay total debt because we have over $440 million. Now, the question is, saan napupunta itong pera ito? Ito ba, dinadala, nakalagay dyan karamihan ay for casino. At syempre, pag nilagay sa casino yan, at nanalo, pinasok ng cash, babalik ka ngayon, bibigyan sila ng certificate na nanalo sila, pwede lang ipasok sa banking system, ibabalik na lang ngayon sa source, sapagkat legal na nagkaroon sila ng papel na dokumento. Meron rin silang panlaro, halimbawa sa mga investment. And this is one thing that I'd like everybody to take note. The Philippines has become number 2 today in terms of real estate values in Manila. Tinalo na natin ang Hong Kong. And if you show the slide of the Fitch, makikita nyo, ang Hong Kong pa rin ang pinakamataas, pero ang Pilipinas ay number 2. Bakit? Pumapasok yung mga POGO dyan, at saka yung maaaring yung perang pinapasok dyan ay nadadala sa tinatawag nating real estate. Is just one way of washing or laundering money. Makikita nyo, number 1 ang Hong Kong, halos magkatapat na ang housing price index ng ating Manila, no, or Philippines. That means kung ang Hong Kong nagkakagulo ngayon sa Hong Kong because hindi na makakuha ng apartment ang mga Chinese, mga bata, nababahala sila, ganun dito sa atin. Mahihirapan ng we cannot have our own apartment, our own tenement, because the money has become so expensive, it's very hard to pay for it. So that means it could lead to social conflict later on, Mr. President. Having said that, if we go back now to the previous slide, you can see na hindi lang yan, it can go into other things. Can it fund a military expedition? Can it fund the Maute in Lanao del Norte? Lanao del Sur, rather. Pwede ba sila bumili ng firearms? Can it fund, for example, other things like money laundering can be used in other things? Now, if we want to be safe, we can fund alleviate the classroom shortage in the Philippines of 8,100 for one-story, four-classroom building at 2,775,000 each. We can fund our armed forces with that kind of money. One frigate costs 18 billion. So makakabili na tayo ng isang frigate. And we can buy 4 F-35 jets at 5.2 billion. Can you slow down, please? I cannot catch up. 5.2 billion pesos each. Go ahead to the next slide. You can fund 15 C-130 aircraft which we need in these islands. 1.5 billion pesos each. Tayo ngayon may 5 na C-130. 2 lang ang lumilipad. Yung 3 nasa garahe. 7 Martin F-16 Fighting Falcons. You can buy all these things, Mr. President, with the kind of money. At 3.12 billion each, kaya bumili natin ng mga bagay na ganyan. Now, saan na pupunta yung pera yan? Like I said, napupunta at nakikita natin, when I relate now and cross over to POGO, makikita nyo sa POGO, they occupy apartments now at 50 or 20 or 40 per apartment. Kaya nag-iba na ang presyo ng real estate dito. So you can see, if you occupy the POGO at 50 per, di ba dapat makialam ang fire department dyan na pagka nakasunog maraming mamatay. There is one multinational subdivision that I can show you a little video on that shows na itong how POGO affects us. No? 70% of the subdivision is now occupied. Now, mind you, this is not a humble subdivision. It is upper middle class. Go ahead, please.
You don't feel it's peaceful at all.
That's a lady.
Na dapat single family lang ang nakatira. You would have sometimes maybe 40. And then iba nga 200, 100 plus in one single house. You don't know who our neighbors are anymore.
Mali pa pala ako, 1 to 200. Nagpapalit-palit. They're fetched by buses. Nice-looking buses. Nice-looking vans. They go going back, 12 years sa van na yan. Now, can you imagine the impact on water alone? There's a water shortage in our country, in Manila. Sa dami yan, let's say 400,000 POGO, maapektuhan ang tubig natin, maapektuhan ang kuryente natin, maapektuhan lahat, pati basura. So, we do have a problem here, 19 passengers. Baba dyan sa bus na yan, o akyat. Baba. Can you speed it up some more? And look at the house. There's another house. Yun, 50 ang katao doon sa bahay na yan. Yan. Nabutan natin ang bahay na may lamang 50. Dito, coaster number 1, total passenger 21. Their coasters are clearly marked, which means it's a very organized operation, Mr. President. Hiring buses, hiring cars, hiring vans, getting homes. Kompleto talaga. Mas organized pa sa gobyerno, Mr. President. So, yan, Hyundai bus. And they have numbers on the buses. Para school bus nung araw. 130, 220. So you can see, Mr. President, it's a very highly organized operation. And what's the problem also is that they even have a firing range inside. That's right. Firing range. Yan, aside of the firing range, sinuturbisyon ng mga tao. And by the way, if you recall, the other day, there were PLA identification cards caught in a shooting involving 3 Chinese types na napatay ata isa at iba yan. No? Killing of a Chinese worker for an online gaming company in Makati was shrouded in mystery on Saturday after the police chief. I submit, Mr. President, because we found Chinese military identification cards here, although hindi in possession of the people who killed, there are 2 things that you investigate. Bakit may baril yung mga yan? Bakit may dalawang 45 at saka 9mm na baril yung mga yan? And also, bakit may identity card? Now, of course, sabi nga ni Senator Lacson, we can send missives to China and say, can you identify this PLA card holder? But I'm sure, baka wala mangyari dyan, no? So, in other words, Mr. President, it has crept into our society. So much so, if you have 400,000 people here, and not only in Manila, they are already in other places. Davao, Olongapo, in my own hometown, meron sila. And nagkalat talaga ang POGOs, no? So, you can imagine the presence of 400,000 people in Manila that can easily take over. And I'm going from the sublime to the ridiculous. You can take a look. In Pampanga, they have 4. Olongapo, they have 3. In Calabarzon, they have 2. In Central Visayas, they have 4. The whole Cavite Covlandia has been taken over by apartments built for POGO, Mr. President. So talagang they have overwhelmed us. It's a creeping invasion where they have taken up specific areas where the Chinese are. I'm not being Sinophobic. I'm just trying to express some concern on why there is no seeming regulation, no seeming effort to try and locate these people. If they have firearms, delikado yan. If they're bringing in money, hinanap ba natin yung pera kung saan dinala? Tayong lahat dito, ang tawag sa atin dito, politically exposed persons tayo. When we put in money in the bank, they will ask us, saan mo kinuha yung pera? Even my children, tatanungin yan, politically exposed ang tatay mo, kamag-anak mo, asawa mo, nanay mo, tatay, politically exposed person, sasaliksikin yan. When I got a donation from my good friend in Taiwan of $1 million for the Red Cross, just for recently, nagtagal doon sa bangko at I had to call them, oy, para sa Red Cross yan. Ito mga ito, labas-pasok doon sa airport na walang, excuse me, na wala man lang tanong. Worse, shouldn't be. Lagay mo na, sabi ng batas, basta nag-declare, okay. Pero nahuli nung isang beses, hindi nag-declare. Si Rodriguez. A few days later, he's back, only declaring. So does that mean na porque nag-declare ka, hindi mo na hahanapin yung pera? Dapat hanapin natin kung saan napunta yung pera, at the very least. Kung wala sa law yan, is it time to change the law and make sure that anybody who makes a declaration of a significant amount of money must declare right there and there. The other question I ask is, nag-report ang customs sa Central Bank. Nag-report in September. Hanggang ngayon, walang aksyon. Ayan, sinumbong si Rodriguez, Simon John Gangani, no? Na nagpasok ng 700,000 at later on nagpasok ulit ng $17 million. Up to now, wala pa rin. At nung nilabas ko ng isang araw yan, sabi ni Central Bank Governor, my good friend, and it's a good friend indeed, si Ben Diokno from UP, sabi niya, noted, no? No comment, sabi niya gano'n. Si Sally Dominguez, who I went to school with in Ateneo, said, I'm aware of it. And now, sabi niya ngayon, ina-alert na nila. Maybe too late, the horse may be out of the barn. Pumasok na lahat ang pera. Saan dinala yan? Saan ginamit yan? Has it gone to Mindanao? Has it gone to buy arms? You will recall, Mr. President, na noong 1970s, President Marcos had to go to China para awatin si Mao Zedong na magpadala ng resources sa NPA. And that's how tumigil ang NPA, nawalan sila ng sources of funding. So you can see, we will be easily destabilized by anybody, by even a syndicate with a lot of money. That kind of money, as I said, can buy all kinds of arms, can buy schools, can buy C-130s, can even put people in office easily. They can fund the kind of disease of some of our friends, and they can become regulatorily captured, if not hostage, to whatever these people want. So, Mr. President, I am sincerely concerned about this because, as I already told you, I don't have to go to too many things like, with that amount of money, they can buy their own condominiums, they can build their own buildings. I even heard that a friend of mine, I don't have proof of this, but I was told that natakot magsabi, they bought 1 billion pesos of, sa bahay sa Forest Park. Ginamit yung pangalan ng asawa at humanap na lang sa outside area na magbibigay ng manager's check for the cash para natuloy yung transaction. So obviously, Mr. President, there is need for us to make sure that we check this. Why? I'll even show you how brazen they are. They even have a bus that says, if you need to fix up your immigration, ayan, yung bus na yan, nakalagay, airport transfer, company, visa, tickets, passport service, immigration clearance, extended stay, work visa. My gosh, Mr. President, I was the Secretary of Tourism. We brought in these tourists, visa on arrival, but it was clear they cannot extend, they cannot convert. Pero ito they convert, we should ask the Department of Labor, sino nagbibigay ng permit? Yung mga tao natin, tama, si Senator Villanueva. Ang hirap-hirap kumuha ng trabaho, pero ito mga ito, papasok dito, i-convert nila yung tourist visa nila, magkakaroon sila ng trabaho kagad dito sa mga bagay na ito. Sino ba ang kumikita talaga dito? Ang kita ng gobyerno, kaparinggit, Mr. President. Ang kita ng gobyerno sa taxes, do you have it? Ay kumulang lang 9 billion. Alam nyo ba, yung TIN, walang TIN karamihan yan. Out of 60 POGOs, only 10 organizations have their employees properly documented with TIN. So ano kukuha na 9 billion, samantala dapat makuha 20 billion. Isa pang masakit dyan, ay yung tax nila, franchise tax, dapat 5%. They were assessed 5% by the BIR. Ang inassess, because nag-appeal, nagpunta sa PAGCOR, ang sabi ng PAGCOR, hindi, 2% lang yan because that is money earned abroad. I disagree with that, Mr. President. Why should we keep leaning over backward? And the Finance Secretary back up the PAGCOR. So ano nangyari, instead of getting a lot of money, like maybe about 50 billion more, wala tayong nakuha. Doon na sa TIN, we could get another 50 billion in taxes. And yet, tayo mga Pilipino, we just watch the caravans go by, and we don't know it's hurting us. We don't know that it's making inroads to our moral fiber. You have prostitution here. Senator Hontiveros uncovered this. Take a look at the pictures of our people, our country being used to allow them to have their own prostitution dens, Mr. President. Their own drugs, everything. And it doesn't matter whether Chinese or Filipino. That is a travesty upon mankind, Mr. President. So you see, it really affects the moral fiber of our nation, distorts our property values, distorts our capability to control people who can do it. They do it with such impunity, they stick their tongue out as they go all the way to the back. They shoot people, and they get away with it. They kidnap POGO employees, Mr. President. My gosh, what has happened to our country? Sabi nga ni Senator Duron, sabi niya, in all my 21 years, mas matanda sa akin na si Duron ng konti, sa itsura, no? Itsura lang. But I'm telling you, I am chagrined, as I'm sure Senator Duron is. We smile about it. We are both chagrined that this is happening to our country. This is totally unacceptable. I don't care if they put in money. If you want a very quick solution, dalhin nyo sila doon sa somewhere in Nueva Ecija, doon mo sila ilagay doon. At wala na dito sa Maynila. Then, hindi pa magkakaroon ng problema sa kuryente o sa tubig dito. And at least you can know where they are. You have to know where they are. If you don't know where they are, Kung sakaling magkagulo yan, di natin alam kung nasa naroon yan. Do you remember, and Senator Dillon and I were talking about it earlier, and I've been saying this on radio. Ang sabi ko, do you remember Little Tokyo in Davao? When General Bato de la Rosa was 10 years old and there was a Little Tokyo in Davao? And, di ba 10? 15 ba? And all of a sudden, these people in sari-sari stores, they were majors and colonels in the Kanpeitai, in the Japanese army. So when the Japanese came in, they knew where to land, they knew where to go, and you know that maybe some of this money can be used to really get people who will cooperate with them in case we have trouble with them. Are they penetrating our armed forces? Are they penetrating our police? My God, Mr. President, sometimes I joke about it. I used to do it, not anymore. I used to say that we must be a viable country. But today we're becoming a viable country. B-U-Y-A-B-L-E. Hindi na tayo viable as a country. We let our borders collapse. We let our islands be taken over by some of our neighbors who are supposed to be good guys. And, Mr. President, we allow them to bring in as much money as they want. They come from Hong Kong, and they are allowed to gamble here, but the take is so little, it's not even worth the spit, Mr. President. And so, Mr. President, I would like just to thank the body for allowing me this so that when we conduct the public hearing on Thursday, we will all know where we are, the overview. And we should be able to research, each of us, to be able to know how we can fix this situation, not just in aid of legislation, but to ensure that the flag of the country still reigns sovereign in our country, that we cannot allow any other country to gain economic, they used to say imperialism. Imperialism was a way a country was able to take over and run the natural resources of a country and take it back home. Here is another kind of imperialism. This is mercantile imperialism. Talagang the power of money. Every day they come in and they buy our people, and they buy our homes, and they buy our buses, and they buy our everything, Mr. President. It's a juggernaut. And to my mind, it's about time we act. We must act, Mr. President. Read my lips. It is time to act. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
The Minority Leader is recognized, Senator Dillon.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Will the gentleman from Zambales, our good friend Senator Gordon, yield the floor?
Yes, sir.
A few clarificatory questions.
Willingly, Mr. President.
Mr. President, what we hear today, 10 years ago, was nowhere in our consciousness. There was no POGO then. That's why there were no incidents described in detail by our colleague from Zambales, and I have to put on record my commendation for his being able to gather all of these facts. But, Mr. President, what I want to bring out in this interpellation is a question of policy, because we are policy makers.
That's correct.
Now, obviously, this is happening because we have POGOs in our country today. If we don't allow POGOs, these incidents would not have happened. Would you agree with that, Mr.
That
Sloan?
may be so, Mr. President. Probably so.
I'm sorry?
That probably so.
Yes, because if there are no POGOs, all of these nefarious activities would have no purpose. Now, is the gentleman aware that that initially this kind of overseas gaming operations was prevalent and done extensively in Cambodia?
Yes, sir. In fact, they removed it already.
That's correct. It was initially in Cambodia, but because of the objections of the Chinese government, they closed the overseas gaming operations in Cambodia, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. In fact, they brought the Chinese police
Yes.
in an airplane, and they pick up all these POGO people, those criminals, and they brought them on a plane back to China. An intrusion on the sovereignty of Cambodia, Mr. President.
But that is the way by which the POGO operations stopped in Cambodia. I'm not saying that the same thing should happen here, but as we point out,
We shouldn't allow that, Mr. President. Let
but
China.
the fact is, Mr. President, the overseas gaming operations in Cambodia was stopped.
That's correct, Mr. President.
Now,
But they still have the casinos.
Yes, but I'm talking about POGO only. Now, Mr. President, where do you think this POGO, with overseas gaming operations went?
Maybe here.
Not maybe. They came to Manila. They came to the Philippines because they were no longer allowed to operate in Cambodia. In fact, Mr. President, I want to bring something to the attention of the Chamber and the good sponsor. There was a notice from the police office of Yantai City, Shandong Province in China, dated January 29, 2020, which effectively says, and let me quote the English translation, it says, quote, those who participated in overseas communication scams and POGO gambling and who have taken the initiative to return to their hometowns before February 8 this year will not be blamed. In so many, I don't want to read the whole text, Mr. President, but the whole text apparently is a notice that requiring all those who committed telecommunications fraud and includes POGO, it mentions POGO, gambling specifically. This is a notice from the Chinese police and it mentions POGO and saying that they should return to China. Confronted with this information, our ambassador, Philippine ambassador to China, Chito Santa Romana, did not deny that this was, he said, I am not aware of it, it has not come out of the state media, but I will not be surprised if indeed there was that order, although it will be implemented gradually so as not to harm the Philippine economy. Now, so apparently, Mr. President, if I read, and we will bring this out in more detail in the investigation. Apparently, really, the Chinese government has taken a very strong position on their citizens being engaged in overseas gambling, and they have taken a very strong campaign in Cambodia, resulting in the closure of POGO, of overseas gaming operations. What I'm driving out, Mr. President, is this, what is happening to our country today, apparently is rooted in the very presence of overseas gaming operations run by the Chinese. Is that correct, Mr. President?
Yes, Your Honor.
And therefore, shouldn't we examine the possibility of really, after the investigation that you have done, consider the possibility of expressing the sentiment of the Senate that the POGO operation should be stopped? Senator Villanueva has mentioned that in his investigation of the workers, Chinese workers. Senator Hontiveros mentioned that in the course of her expose on the Bureau of Immigration. And now Senator Gordon has again mentioned it in the process to expose the sums of money coming in. It's maybe about time, Mr. President, that we should examine this policy. We are a policy-making body. Should we continue with this policy of allowing overseas gaming operations in the country with all the illicit activities that comes with it?
Everything is on the table, Mr. President, including eradicating POGO entirely. But before that, I'd like to see what are the syndicates behind this.
Yes.
I'd like to know how much taxes we're collecting, and I want to know who is not paying the taxes and who is not enforcing the law, Mr. President.
I agree with the President. In other words, we must lay the basis for whatever policy this chamber will adopt. I am just saying that we should have all options on the table, including passing legislation which would declare this illegal. The theory of the Chinese government, if it's illegal in my country, it should be illegal for my citizens to do the illegal thing outside of my borders. And that is why they have prohibited in Cambodia the operation or the participation of Chinese citizens in overseas operations. And they have, at least the police in China, did issue a warning that they will cancel the passports. And as I would repeat, our Philippine ambassador to China did not discount the possibility of this order really issued, and although the implementation may be gradually done. Because, Mr. President, again, as I said, all of what you have exposed in this chamber, the shenanigans from of what we see here, all arises because of a policy decision to allow overseas gaming operations in our country. And I agree with the good sponsor that we should expose this and see exactly to what extent this is happening, so that this can be the basis of a policy which we will adopt insofar as POGO operations is concerned. Would the gentleman agree with that, Mr. President?
I agree with it wholeheartedly, Mr. President. In fact, if I may be allowed to add, in my whole career, Mr. President, I've learned not to look closely at a particular problem without the comprehension. I always step back and take a look and put in all the matters that are happening and see what is the impact of this in our country. For an example, Mr. President, are they using, I'm not totally exculpating China from this because they have the biggest intelligence agency in the world, Mr. President, as far as I know. I'm not discounting the fact that they could be sending intelligence agents here, as you can see with the PLA badge and certainly in other areas. Mr. President, there's another thing that I'd like to emphasize here as well. At the height of the coronavirus, if you take a look at when it came in, December, January, February, they brought in about 200+ million pesos here. Dollars here, Mr. President, not pesos. Dollars at the height of the coronavirus. And there was a plane from China, Mr. President, that Philippine Airlines landed here, a plane, when they took over, of our compatriots in Wuhan, in an area there. And Mr. President, what came in was a lot of other Chinese personalities. The Filipinos were put on a bus and they were brought to Clark. I wrote a letter to the Department of Health about this for quarantine. But the Chinese were allowed to go home, Mr. President. I think that's very cavalier. I think they should have been under the microscope, so to speak, to protect our people. But it seems when it comes to China, malambot tayo. And nagagalit pa si Secretary Panelo sa akin. Dapat daw ibigay ko. Ang nagbigay na nga ng reports dito sa atin ay yung Commissioner of Customs. Walang ginawa sila ng September, wala silang ginawa October, November, December, January, February. Now it's March, wala pa silang ginawa. If the Senate has not done its duty, it would not happen, Mr. President.
Yes, and let me again commend for the record what the gentleman from Zambales has done insofar as putting this in the public consciousness. But I would repeat, Mr. President, all of this arose because of the policy of allowing overseas gaming operations principally with the Chinese as the clientele because gambling is prohibited in China, and therefore it is the Chinese officials they would really take offense at the fact that their citizens are traveling in Manila to engage in gaming operations. In fact, in that document which I cited, the Chinese police said all those involved in overseas telecommunications fraud and gambling will have their passports cancelled.
Yes.
And therefore, all of these POGO workers that we see here would have to go back to China. By the way, Mr. President, to your information, how many POGO workers are there in the country today? Illegal and illegal? I mean, with work permit and without any work permit. I know Senator Villanueva has been looking into this, but would for the record?
I know that Senator Villanueva, he's really hot under the collar here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. If, with the indulgence of distinguished gentleman from Zambales, unfortunately, Mr. President, we have different data coming from the Department of Labor and Employment, POGO, BIR task force. For Dole figure, it's 123,056. Only, yes, Mr. President. PAGCOR figures is 97,283. While the task force came up with the figure 108,914.
So which is which?
Your guess is as good as mine if you want to
That's
these are
all,
all registered, Mr. President.
that's only in Pasay.
We are not even
correct.
talking about
Yes.
the total number of foreign workers who came
Point
here.
of
Because
information, Mr. President, on January, February, again at the height of the coronavirus, when it was discovered in Wuhan, 596,000 or 536,000 Chinese arrived here. Arrived here. So, you know that there is unregistered, there's unregistered, and they're operating all over. These can operate clandestinely, Mr. President, because of the internet.
Mr. President, just for the record, the range that was given by, of numbers, or the numbers given by Senator Villanueva, is anywhere from 97,000 as a low,
yes, and 123,056
as a high.
as a high.
Mr. President, the estimate in the private sector, which I assume is more accurate or more believable, there are about 200,000 POGO workers in our country, and the leasable that the POGO operations rent approximately 450,000 square meters of land, of office space. So this, to me, Mr. President, what the POGO industry is doing to us is create a bubble in the real estate industry, so that the moment they leave, there's a danger that your real estate industry will suffer, because you can imagine if there are 450,000 gross leasable area that they rent.
I direct the attention with the permission of my good friend,
Yes.
Senator
Well, there
Dilan.
you have a better
Yes.
presentation, probably.
That's right, Mr. President. 1,405,011 square meters for existing POGO occupiers, Mr. President.
Is that only for the operations, or that includes the residences?
Doesn't include the real estate. That's just the commercial buildings that they're occupying, Mr. President. Office space. They become number one, no longer BPO. POGO is now number one, Mr. President, in office space. And I can prove that. Di ba meron tayo? Pakita nyo nga. Ayan, no? And you can see that it has grown and grown and grown. And in fact, I think they have overcome the BPO. This is by Lee Shu, the expert in real estate.
Well, the BPO industry plateaued, and the POGO industry took up the leasable area. But again, Mr. President,
And that's why your point about the bubble is dangerous.
yes,
Because it creates a disruption and a distortion
Yes.
of the reality. If they suddenly pull out, what happens to the banks who lend money?
that's correct, Mr. President. Very correct. When they pull out, the banks who financed all of this leasable space
Condominiums.
would be holding the empty bag. These are footloose operations. So again, Mr. President, you know, except for the property for the property market, where the property prices have gone up, I do not really see any difference. Yes, on the board, maybe the good chairman, Senator, can
Yes, Mr.
explain to
President.
us.
Fitch ratings show the property price hikes. It's a spike, rising risk to the bank. Fitch ratings noted that prices of residential properties rose 10% year on year in the third quarter of 2019, making it one of the strongest growth prints in any major real estate market since 2010. Condominium prices in Metro Manila climbed by an unsustainable 30% year on year, Fitch pointed out.
And unfortunately, Mr. President, these very figures are being cited by those who defend the POGO operations as a benefit to the economy. It's quite unfortunate. These are short-term gains, and which puts us in at the end of the barrel insofar as the POGO operators are concerned. Again, this points to the fact that we must adopt a clear policy once all of these are established in order to have a long-term solution to this problem, not only a knee-jerk reaction, but something, if we are convinced that indeed this is not good for our country, we should adopt a policy, a stronger policy on this, insofar as their continued operation of the gaming operation, the game of POGOs are concerned.
That is why, Mr. President, I said earlier, I stepped back to look at the comprehension. What are the, as Senator Lacson was whispering to me earlier, what do we do? What do we do about it? You know, there's intelligence and security matters that have to be addressed. There's property that has to be addressed. There is crime that has to be addressed, prostitution, labor that has to be addressed. And we have to work together as a Senate to find out what is the best way to do something about it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, and we hope that this investigation that will be led by Senator Gordon will lead us to a clearer option insofar as policy is concerned with regards to the Philippine overseas gaming operations industry. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Before we recognize Senator Villanueva and Senator Ontiveros, who would like to know if the gentleman has in his stats the amount or figure how much the Philippines earns from these POGOs.
Yes, Mr. President, I think we have that. We earned about 50, we missed out 8 billion pesos from the employees, Mr. President. Regulatory fee, 8 billion pesos, Mr. President.
Per year.
A measly 8 billion. And the opportunity losses could go up to about even more. 45 billion? 50 billion, 50 billion.
All right, Senator Villanueva and then Senator Ontiveros.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. At the onset, may I
Unrealized.
put on record this representation's appreciation and commendation to the distinguished gentleman from Zambales for taking the cudgels in exposing these wicked schemes that are happening right before our very eyes. Let me remind the body that in November 2016, when we started hearing the illegal foreign workers at Clark Air Base, when we started conducting the investigation, and then we moved from the Committee on Labor to the Blue Ribbon Committee. If you would recall, Mr. President, dun ho lumabas yung dalawang commissioner from the Bureau of Immigration, Commissioner Argosino and Commissioner Robles, na sa unang bahagi ng hearing kinomend pa namin dahil nahuli po yung dun sa Pampanga, more than 1,000 plus. Yung pala, during that time, nakakuha na sila. Nakahingi na sila ng 15 million pesos.
No, iba yun. Iba yung nahingi nila doon. Hindi natin ma-improve. Yung nakuha nila dito, nakuha ng video.
Exactly po.
Ayan o.
And just to point out, dito ho nagsimula during the hearing yung ating curiosity, ano ba talaga itong POGO? And that's why, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, we have been calling to curb the ill effects of POGO. We made mention about the real estate bubble, and perhaps we should not only look into the prices na going up or spiking, but also we look at our kababayans na nangangarap balang araw magkaroon ng sariling unit sa isang condominium.
It's unreachable.
Unreachable. Yung pong hinahanap natin na negosyo na maaaring maitayo at makapag-produce o makapag-create ng jobs. This POGO, they are hiring 95% Chinese nationals. So again, we have been calling for the suspension of this operation until such a time that the interagency departments would put their acts together and say, we are ready, because until now, all of us, sa Committee on Labor, Committee on Women, and now Committee on, ng Blue Ribbon, hindi ho natin makita yung exact figures. How many workers are there? And we are only talking about legal workers.
If I may,
Yes.
Mr. President and colleagues in the Senate, I'd imagine, I suggested this a long time ago. Why are we allowing the Chinese? Because they speak Chinese. But as far as I'm concerned, I was willing to give them 2 years to teach us Chinese, so we take over. But the value of teaching Chinese to our people can be utilized no longer in POGO, but for other things, to interpret what the Chinese policy is and to interpret what our intelligence can make, read their newspapers. We could have taken advantage of this. Now, they've had enough time. I think it's time to go, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, you know, we have been saying this. We're not against foreign workers going to the country. If there are foreign workers working in the country, it's because no one is able, capable, or willing to do that particular job. And we welcome foreign workers. In fact, we have a bill here in the Senate to come up with a mechanism to ensure that when they are working here, they will be able to transfer the knowledge, the technical know-how to our kababayan so that someday our kababayans can do the job. In fact, TESDA is offering LSI. We have 40 plus language skills institute where we can train our people and speak Chinese. So these are the things that we wanted to focus on, Mr. President, distinguished colleague. But let me ask our distinguished colleague, because he knows very well about all this shenanigans going on. May we know from the distinguished gentleman if he is aware of any studies conducted by the Anti-Money Laundering Council to analyze covered and suspicious transactions involving POGO, POGO operator, and POGO service providers. Because I think it's important to also note that there are about 59 total POGOs. And of the 59 total POGOs, Mr. President, only 11 are Philippine-based. 48 are offshore. And then there are about 229 service providers. So may I ask the distinguished gentleman if we have some sort of information from the AMLA Council regarding this particular issue?
Actually, Mr. President, I don't want to insult AMLA, but their silence is deafening. I mean, I would imagine that they would be more aggressive in telling us that this is a problem that we can do something about. Just as Senator Gilon said, policy has to be made, Mr. President, because they can only do so much, no? But nonetheless, I am not familiar with any study, and I hope you can share that study with me so I can use that when we start conducting the investigation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I promise the majority leader that I won't take long. I have several information here that I will share with the distinguished gentleman from Cavite. I would just like to point out once again, Mr. President, in the last year alone, there are about 6,678 illegal foreign workers. Just last year, 6,678 illegal foreign workers. And these workers are working in these POGO service providers na nakakuha po ng lisensya sa PAGCOR. And that's so disheartening, Mr. President. And in addition to the 6,678 illegal foreign workers last year, there are 733 international fugitives na nahuli po at nandito na sa ating bansa. And so, again, I'd like to commend the distinguished gentleman for rising up today, and I would join him in his quest to unveil this wicked shenanigans perpetrated by POGO operators. He made mention a while ago about the non-payment of taxes. The BIR already stated, you talk about withholding taxes, corporate income tax, VAT, value-added tax, etc., amounting to 50 billion pesos, Mr. President. Ito yung mga hindi nababayad. And kanina binanggit po ng ating kasamahan yung tungkol po dun sa franchise tax. 5% po ang sinasabi ng batas. Pero mismong PAGCOR, hindi ho makatulong sa BIR para hanapin ito at ma-require sila na magpagbayad. So, again,
Tapos tayo ng taas ng tax. Tapos yung sitira, tatanggalin pa nila yung mga tax doon sa kwan. Eh di mababawasan tayo ng trabaho. Di ba? Sorry.
Yan po yung concern natin, Mr. President. And again, I'd like to thank the gentleman from Zambales for exposing this particular issue. And I join him in his quest to address this sickening problem. Thank you, Mr. President.
President, one final point before Senator Risa speaks up. There's the other problem that I'd like to see here, and I'd like to be part of the investigation. How many people die and how many people assume the identity of that person who died? When we were kids, I remember the Taiwanese were very, very famous for doing that. Somebody dies and the identity is assumed by somebody. Why are you pointing at Senator Gatchalian? He's an original, natural-born resident dyan. You know, Senator Subiri is out of line, Mr. President. I'm sorry, no. This is important. I just want to be sure. That we are able to take a look at that, because I've been getting text messages saying that some people are assuming the identity of the person who died. I'm sorry, Pia. Thank you. Sorry, I'm just defending you from this, from Darth Vader over there. Go ahead.
Senator Ontiveros, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dalawang punto sa isang maikling manifestation, konkretong halimbawa ng sinabi ng gentleman from Zambales about working together, and the narrative sketched for us by the minority leader. Yung isang magandang nakita po natin dito sa Senado in the past several months ay synergy among different Senate committees looking into the policy issues nitong POGO operations. Sinimulan ng Senate Committee on Labor kay Chair Senator Joel sa labor at saka sa tax evasion issues. Sinundan nung Senate Committee on Women and Children, chaired by this representation, mga issues din naman ng trafficking, prostitution, illegal recruitment din, at pag-corrupt sa Bureau of Immigration. At ngayon,
All right, senators there discussing issues surrounding the offshore gaming industry. This comes after Senator Richard Gordon, in his privilege speech earlier, called for a formal investigation into activities or illegal activities of Chinese nationals in the country. In his presentation, Gordon said at least 47 Chinese individuals brought in over $440 million. That's equivalent to 22.6 billion pesos, which he alleges was laundered mostly in casinos. Now, he highlighted the negative impact of POGOs on the country and questioned where POGO money goes and what it is used for. Of course, this comes after multiple reports of Chinese nationals involved in kidnappings, prostitution rings, and just recently, the killing of another Chinese national. Now, Chinese military IDs belonging to another Chinese national were recovered from the suspects in that case. The hearing is scheduled for Thursday, March 5th. You can still catch the rest of the Senate session on our Facebook Live. I'm Menchu Macapagal. Good afternoon.
As correctly stated by Senator Villanueva when we handled POGO going from Santa Ana to Clark, and that's where this whole thing started. It never ends, Mr. President, and it will not end. Thank you very much,
Mr. President, before we refer to the speech of the good gentleman from Zambales, Mr. President, I'd just like to ask the good gentleman from Zambales, Senator Gordon, are we allowed to bring in male-maletang pera sa bansa? Because if you go to other countries, and I'd like to ask Senator Gordon this,
Declare.
if you go to other countries, you have a maleta full of, let's say, $1 million, you go into the United States, Mr. President, even if you declare it, they will hold you, because that could be drug money. You have to show proof of your income if you're Jeff Bezos, if you are the owner of Macintosh, si Bill Gates, and the other billionaires, pwede po yun. Pero if you are just an ordinary citizen bringing $1 million into the United States, unless you show proof of income, Mr. President, hindi talaga sila papayag doon. Talaga red flag ka nun, I'm sure they will detain you. You do that in Europe, they will detain you. Because they know it's either racketeering money, RICO money, or what you call racketeering you get this money illegally through laundering. So, Mr. President, I just want to ask, wala bang protocol ang ating Bureau of Customs pagdating sa airport natin pag may nakita silang ganong karaming pera na dala-dala ng isang tao?
Reminds me of the Euro generals.
That's correct.
Yes. But the Euro generals, Mr. President, was detained. And their money was confiscated.
Correct, that's right.
How come, what happened here with us?
Well, two questions, two answers. Number one, the answer to that is in America, if you bring $1 million and you say, I declare the progeny of the money that I'm bringing in, they will let you go. but you have to declare. Maybe they'll let you go a second time. But here, if you were looking at the presentation, every other day, money was coming in, and one guy brought in, I think, for 47 times, millions and millions of dollars. I'm sure he would have been arrested by the FBI. That's where the lacuna in the law occurs, whether we should now allow Customs. What is their protocol? Customs reported it to Central Bank, and they said, I don't know. They have not given to us what they have done about it. They just filed one case of non-declaration, but the rest of the declared amounts were never pursued.
My goodness.
And there's a second point.
Unbelievable.
Second.
Get it down there.
What is the second answer? He's not finished.
Yes, Mr. President. Well, mine is maybe we come out with sense of the Senate. Maybe it is God-given that China is actually canceling their passports. Why don't we encourage them to cancel all the passports of these POGO workers here so that they all go home? They'll do the job for us.
Well,
By
the
canceling their
gentleman-
passports, Mr. President, I personally would be one with my colleagues if that is a sense of the Senate that asking the government of China to clamp down on their compatriots working supposed to be illegally here because it's an illegal activity in China, Mr. President.
The gentleman will be having a hearing on Thursday, I understand, and perhaps
Yes,
after that we can come up with that resolution. Senator Gordon, yes?
Just a point of final information, Mr. President. This is just Manila. They come into Clark. They come into they didn't. They don't have an exhibit.
By boat.
Airport,
Cebu, how about
Cebu,
Cebu?
Davao. They go everywhere, Mr. President. And this is Bukidnon, wala pa, Mr. President.
Walang daan.
Bukid pa lang yun, Bukid pa.
Malapit na airport. Pag may airport.
But Mr. President, I just want to raise the alarm bells. This is just Manila. We don't know what's going on in other areas, and that's why we have to really find out what's going on. Thank you, Mr.
All right,
President.
thank you.
Mr. President,
Was
Mr.
it
President, I
you-
move that we...
Was it you, Senator Gordon, or Senator Villanueva, who said there were 300-something criminals that entered?
Senator Villanueva.
700
733 international fugitives.
that entered.
Yes.
Where are they now?
But some of them were already deported. Some of them were detained, Mr. President.
Oh, you should bring them to North Korea. Senator Pangilinan.
Some of them are back already.
Yes, Mr. President, just a manifestation of how serious and how massive the problem is. If the committees in the Senate would look into the many laws that have been violated, I think all the committees will be conducting hearings. Labor law, tax law, immigration law, banking laws, anti-graft, anti-trafficking of women, anti-money laundering, anti-kidnapping, local ordinances, passport laws, gambling laws, national security. Lahat ho nung committee natin sa Senado, iimbestigahan lahat ng mga batas na binabaliwala ng POGO operation. I join the majority leader. If there is a sense of the Senate resolution, Mr. President, we will support it.
All right,
very much,
that will include the Committee on Games.
Yes, Mr. President,
No,
absolutely.
except the Committee on Sports.
Inside the lounge, Mr. President, before I refer the speech, inside the lounge we were discussing and saying that imagine the last year alone, or 2 years already, we've been discussing problems due to POGO in almost every week of our sessions.
Really?
Every session week we've been having hearings from different committees of the different committees of the Senate. So this must be really significant in terms of laws that have been bypassed by this new industry, Mr. President. It's something that's quite alarming and we should look into.
All right.
Mr. President, with that, I move to refer the committee of the distinguished gentleman from Zambales to the speech, rather, of the good gentleman to the Blue Ribbon Committee, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I spoke, I said motu proprio. I was going to do that, but I thank my good friend Senator Subiri for.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none. So referred.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move, first of all, we'd like to thank the sponsor, Senator Pia Cayetano of the Sitira measure, because we accommodated her on the speech of the good gentleman from Zambales. So we thank her for her patience. So now, Mr. President, we move to consider Senate Bill number 1357 under Committee Report number 5050.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of 1357 is in order.
Mr. President, may we recognize the sponsor, Senator P.S. Cayetano, and to interpolate the distinguished gentleman from Cavite, Francis Tol Tolentino.
The distinguished lady from Taguig and Pateros is recognized. And to interpolate the gentleman from Cavite, Senator Francis Tolentino.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are ready when the gentleman from Cavite is ready.
Mr. President, will the good sponsor yield to some clarificatory questions? Konti lang po ito, Mr. President.
Yes, of course. We thank the gentleman for taking time to study it and post the questions so we can also help clarify any issues.
Mr. President, just to jumpstart the Sitira bill, which I think is very